everyone. Thanks for joining us here today at Book Blather. If you're new here, I'm Dave, and this is Olive, and we talk about books that we've read or acquired recently to help spread the joy of reading. Now, the last video that we recorded before we went on vacation, was what we called part one of our hauls from local library book sales. So we just went on vacation, or I just went on vacation. Olive watched the house with her sister and some friends. And I went on vacation, and I went to Disney to celebrate. I turned 50. Went to Disney World with my family to celebrate my 50th birthday. And then we had a number of follow-up guests immediately after that, staying at our house. And so before you know it, now, once again, it's been like a minute. But so a lot of really cool things at Disney that hadn't been there since the last time I was there. So I never know if people want to see like non-bookish content. But if anybody, I took a lot of footage. So if anybody wants to see that, let us know. Put it in the next video. But anyway. That last video, we mentioned that we had gone to 2 book sales at the same local library, a couple months apart, and so we did part 1, which was what we hauled the first time. Second time we went, we hauled even more, so we saved that for part 2, which is what we're doing today. There was a lot of cool stuff. I'm excited to show you guys. So, as always, we will get right into it. So the first thing that we picked up was this. My sister, and we're going to need, not with this one, but we're going to need you guys' help today, actually, because a few of these we don't really know anything about. So we're going to need some advice from you guys about what maybe we should read in the near future and what maybe isn't worth reading. So you know us, we go to these sales, books are like $1 or $2, so we just pick a lot up knowing that, we're probably never going to read some of them. Let us know, help us out what we should read, because we don't necessarily know too much about all of them. So the first one that we picked up is this, My Sister, the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. I think I pronounced that right, but if not, really sorry about that. And so this was published a couple years ago, and we saw a lot going around about it on BookTube. And this one looks really cool. We're actually pretty excited to try this one. This is about a girl whose sister, so this woman's sister is a serial killer, and she basically is really good at doing the cover-ups, I think. And so she helps her sister get away with these things, but then some guy comes along that they're both interested in, or at least the main character is interested in, but he's interested in the serial killer's sister. So now she's got to deal with that. And it sounds pretty cool. It's not a super long book, but it sounds like a pretty original, pretty cool story. So we will probably read this in the near future because this one always sounded cool to us. Okay, second book we got is this, Brooklyn, by Colm, Toibin. And this is a book that this is one of those books, you describe the plot, not normally in our wheelhouse, not something we normally would have picked up, but we picked up this one because we had read a couple of things by this author before that were pretty original and that we enjoyed. The first book we ever read by Colm Toibin I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it, was this book called House of Names, and that I think I mentioned that before on the channel, and that was a book that was sort of a retelling of the Greek myth Agamemnon sacrifices his daughter so that they can get the winds to propel the ships for their attack. But that story was really a retelling it was really a story about Agamemnon's son, Orestes, and a sort of a escape adventure that he goes on. And I surprisingly really enjoyed that book a lot. So then I picked up another one of his books, a very short one called The Testament of Mary. And what that was about is that was a novel about Mary after Jesus' death. And 2 of Jesus' followers are checking up on her in her house, just, to make sure that, she doesn't do anything crazy. And she's dealing with that, with these guys checking up on her and what happened to her son, because in this story, Mary is not exactly a Christian and is a little frustrated with everything that had happened with her son. So that was really interesting, very short story, and that was really cool. So he's a great writer. He's a pretty acclaimed writer. Enjoy both of those books a lot. So I wanted to read more by him, And I had heard about this one. This is supposedly one of his best, Brooklyn. This was nominated for the Booker Prize, and this is about an Irish girl that leaves like her mother and sister in Ireland to come to the U.S. So this is like in post World War II times, and then she meets like an Italian boy here and starts to fall in love, but then something happens back home that creates a conflict for her. So that's all I know about it. But I'm guessing I'm going to really like this book based on what I've read by Toibin so far. So anyway, I was happy to see that when I got it. So the next one we picked up, this is The Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. And so this is a classic that came out in the 50s. One of those ones that I don't know. I should know a lot more about it than I do. I probably should have read it long ago. This is a famous classic that deals with a young guy that I think he's in college, and it follows his exploits as he goes on different it has different experiences, but it deals a lot with issues of racism and bigotry and the effects that has. I mean, supposedly, I don't know, I haven't read it, but the effects that has both on the people that are committing or that are perpetrating that and the victims. And supposedly great book, and so I just picked it up. I probably will get to it at some point. It's not high on the TBR, but this is a book. When I saw it, I knew it's one of those books that I should have. So okay, the next one we picked up, we actually already have this in my house because my daughter liked this book, but I didn't. Great copy for $1, and I didn't have it myself. This is Kindred by Octavia Butler. So Octavia Butler, well-known author, and what Kindred is about is about a young woman that is transported back in time to the antebellum South to save a white man, and then ends up repeatedly getting sent back. And I think her stays get longer and longer as she goes back there, and it becomes a more and more dangerous situation for her. But obviously, because she's a black woman in the antebellum South, where slavery is well accepted. So it sounds like a great little a great philosophical sci-fi novel, and my daughter really liked it. So it's one I had my eye on for a while. So I was happy when I saw it there. Okay, this next one is one of those ones that I know literally nothing about. This is Origin by Dan Brown, the author of the famous novel, The Da Vinci Code. And this is another one of his novels. I know nothing about it other than what I saw on the back, which is that it is also about the character Robert Langdon. And he goes to a museum and meets with some billionaire futurist that has some scientific breakthrough, and that starts some grand adventure with lots of symbolism and secret history and all that kind of stuff. That's all I know. I don't know anything about it. If you've read this or know anything about it, and let me know whether it's worth reading or not. Because I don't, I've seen a number of his books around, but don't really know much about any of them except, the Da Vinci Code. So curious to hear what people have to say about that. All right, the next thing we picked up was we saw this Penguin Classics edition of Plato's The Republic. Now, I already have that. This is a famous work by Plato. I already have this. If you've been around the channel, you know that one of my majors in school was philosophy, and therefore I of course have my big ass copy of Plato's works here. But this I saw this like perfect condition copy of that has a ton of works by Plato, but this is just his work, The Republic, which is his most famous. Nice Penguin Classics edition. So I thought I am going to read this again, and so I thought it was worth having this copy. So if you don't know, Plato is one of the basically, I guess, founders of modern philosophy, what you call. He was a Greek philosopher. He was Socrates' student. And so The Republic was a work that he wrote in the style. Basically, he wrote it as a dialogue between his teacher Socrates and various other people. basically discussing, the ideal form of organized society. And so he's one of the most famous philosophers of all time, literally his most famous work. And so we just wanted to have the Penguin Classics copy of it. Okay, the next one we picked up is Mr. Dickens and His Carol, Mr. Dickens and His Carol by Samantha Silva. And this, I don't know too much about it, but I heard somebody talk about it on BookTube, and I don't even remember too much of what they described, but I remember somebody talking about it very fondly on BookTube, that they really enjoyed it. And this is, all I know really is that this is about Dickens, and before he writes Christmas Carol, and he doesn't want to write it, and he's getting pressured by a publisher, I guess, or publishers, and then he meets Eleanor Lovejoy, and I guess she encourages him to write the story, which of course is one famous Christmas story of all time. And so I thought this, I remember somebody really mentioned they really liked it, and I was interested back then when I'd heard that, and it just seemed like it would be a neat read for Christmas time. So I picked this up, and I think I will read that this December. If anybody else is interested in budding reading it, let me know. Okay. Now, the next two books we picked up were, this is the Mammoth. We picked up two books in this series. The Mammoth Hunters and The Plains of Passage. So these are both books by Jean Auel, and these are books 3 and 4 in a 6-part series that's called the Earth's Children series. I think that's right. And these were published back in the 80s, or maybe one of these might have been like 1990. But so the whole series spanned some time. But it started with a famous book called The Clan of the Cave Bear. And so, yeah, you can see they're kind of chunkers. It's a 6-book series. I don't know if I will ever read these, but as again, if you've seen some other book hauls, sometimes stuff like this that I might read, when I see them out there in the wild for like $1 or $2, I'll pick them up, and then with the thought that if I end up putting the whole series together, which has happened to me a number of times, then I'll read the whole series when that happens. And so these were first edition copies of these, which are kind of old now, and I mean not as old as me, but they're old. And so I mean first edition copies, great condition, super cheap. So I picked them up, and we'll see if we end up finding the other ones. If I just find the first two, maybe that'll be enough to get me to get going. So what it's about is this is tells the travels of some prehistoric people. This is set in the time of, so I don't know how much most people know about, hominid origins. So us, Homo sapiens, we are basically the last surviving hominids. But there were others before us, some that history is mixed, some of which we partially evolved from, some of which we coexisted with. And one of the last ones, what was thought to be the last ones for a very long time, were the Neanderthals, which was, they died out about 40,000 years ago. And now we found another one, Homo florensis, that seems to be a lot more recently. Found out on an Indonesian island, and it seems to be I think it was 13, these are dating to 13,000 years ago or something. But anyway, the famous, most recent one until that discovery was, Neanderthals. And so this is set in that time, about 40,000 years ago, and discusses the interaction between, I believe it is a main character that is a Cro-Magnon, which were what we called Homo sapiens back then. Basically Cro-Magnon that I think ends up getting sort of like a Neanderthal adopted family. And so it's their travels. That might not be exactly right, but I think that's the basic theme of these. And so it sounds like a pretty cool story. It's wildly popular. I mean, it's been, read by many, many people over the decades. And so we may give it a try. Like I said, if we ever find that first one, but we'll see. Okay. So the next one is a much more modern one. This is something we had our eye on for a long time, kind of just waiting until we saw it out in the wild. and that's The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. And this is part of a trilogy. This been very popular on BookTube. A lot of talk about this book. This one is this is inspired by this is inspired by Asian culture and Chinese culture, I think in particular. And sorry if I got that wrong, but I think so. And it's about, the main character is sort of a prodigy that ends up going to a military school, military academy, and so it's a grim, dark fantasy, and supposedly very, very rough. And as you can tell, I don't know super a lot about it, but it's a lot of praise for this trilogy. And so this was a brand new copy. Again, this was $1 or $2. It's literally a brand new copy. It's never been read. You can tell it's absolutely brand new. It's in perfect condition. It's like buying it at Barnes and Noble. So I don't know. I just feel really lucky with these things. So there's no way I cannot pick that up. Okay, the next one is so this is another one where I'll just pick them up. So I'll just pick them up and see if I put the series together. So this is the Dinosaur Knights by Victor Milan. Give you a good view of the cover there. So this is actually the second in this series. The first one is the Dinosaur Lords, I believe, and this is 2016. So I mean, not too old, this series, and so this is the second book, and so this is one of those ones. It was $1 or $2, so so let me just grab it and we'll see if I put the trilogy together, because I probably will end up putting the trilogy together before too long. And I know nothing about this. I'd be curious to hear if any of you have read this series. I know nothing about it except that it's like a cross between Jurassic Park and Game of Thrones. And these are knights riding dinosaurs. Knights riding dinosaurs. That's all I need to know. So if I get this series put together, we'll read it. Okay. The next one is, we found, again, this perfect copy. It looks literally brand new, of Wizard's First Rule by Terry Goodkind. So I told a story when Pax had passed away. I told a story about that I had accidentally bought. This is the first book in the Sword of Truth trilogy, which was a fantasy series that she had loved. And I had accidentally bought the second book in that series at a book fair. And so she went and found the prequel to the story and sent that to me to get me to try this series. So now I saw this perfect edition of the first book in the series, so I could not pick it up. I don't know that I'm going to read the whole Sword of Truth series. It is a very long series. They are thick books, but I am going to try that prequel and the first book at some point. Chris, if you're watching, I'm not going to read it right now, so before you ask me. But yeah, so anyway, I'm definitely going to try this at some point, because it was a love of Pax's, and so I saw this great copy. I had to pick that up. And so the last one that I got there is Finders Keepers by Stephen King. And this is another one that I don't know anything about it, and I hadn't heard anything about it other than what I read on the dust jacket. And so supposedly this is about so there's this author and a super fan of this author, and then the author doesn't like write the next book or something. So the super fan kills him and stashes like a bunch of the notes and cash, but then ends up going to prison, and some teenager finds it. And then it's a horror story, I think, based upon when this guy is getting out of prison and now wants his money and cash back. Oh, the notes, the book notes and the cash back. And so, I see a lot of Stephen King books out there in the wild. I don't pick most of them up. We're not a big Stephen King reader, but who doesn't love? But if I see a book about books, books about books automatically just intrigue me. So that's why I picked this one up. Again, I haven't even heard anything about it, so if you know much about this or you've read it and you have any thoughts on whether this one's one worth reading or not, please let us know, because we're probably going to follow that advice and whether we decide to read it or not down the road. So, okay, so that was it for that book haul. So it's some book reviews after this. The end of this month, we had to get these out of the way, because the end of this month, we get, this is like a big event for us every year. There is a humongous book fair nearby. It's like the biggest book fair in New England every year, I think. I mean, it's a huge thing. People come from all over to go to this thing. I go to it and have a big haul every year and do a video on it each year. That's coming in a couple weeks. So we got this out of the way. It's book reviews for the next few videos. We have a bunch that we've read and haven't talked about yet. So, and let us know if you want to see the vacation footage. So that's it. As always, thanks so much for watching. If you have any comments about any of these books, please leave us a comment below. Let us know. If you don't say anything substantive, you can always leave Olive a puppy emoji. As you know, she always likes to see those. So thanks again for watching. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you next time.